And if you have any questions for our panelists after they've all spoken, please type them into the Q&A box. We will be monitoring the Q&A box for questions, not the chat box. Please remember, if you have any need any technical assistance, you can see Jake Shmerskansky's email there. And if you've got any technical questions, you can simply email Jake at ajw-inc.com. Now, speaking of today's session, bioeconomy development zones, driving bio-based investment in Canada. We've got a wonderful panel, starting with a little bit different speaking order than you'll see there on the slide, but Ron McCullough, the city manager of Melville, will start off, followed by Martin Pudlas, the CEO of Red Leaf Pulp. Ralph Goodale, former veteran member of he is a veteran member of Parliament and former federal cabinet minister for energy, finance, and perhaps most important to this webinar, agriculture. And John May, the managing director at HamiltonClark. More detailed bios are available on the website. Now, speaking of our session and our session chair, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my longtime friend and colleague, Jordan Solomon. Jordan, over to you and your panel.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, everyone, wherever you're linking in from. We're very, very happy to be here, and we hope we have an enlightening and exciting session talking about bioeconomy development zones and how they can function to drive bio-based investment into Canada. So with that, Jake, let's go to the presentations. So what we're going to talk about is how bioeconomy development zones, or BD zones as we call them, can drive investment into bio-based projects across the country, accelerate bio-based development, and support government policies. So look, let's just get right into it. It's, Jake, if I could have the next slide. It's not news that COVID has crushed the economy, but the speech from the throne a few weeks ago definitely is news. So on September 23rd, as you all know, the Government of Canada delivered what's arguably the most progressive speech from the throne that was heard in a generation. And really what it signaled is that climate change moved to the center of Canada's million job recovery strategy. And what it said was fascinating, because what it said is that the government will ensure that Canada is the most competitive jurisdiction in the world for clean technology companies, the most competitive jurisdiction in the world for clean technology companies. And it talked about supporting investments in renewable energy and in next generation clean energy. It talked about recognizing farmers and foresters and ranchers as key partners in the fight against climate change and supporting their effort to reduce emissions and to build resilience. And that's important, because what we're going to talk about today is a new program which is just getting off the ground and which is designed to do exactly this. And I'm talking, of course, about the BD Zone, or Bioeconomy Development Zone initiative. So before I get into it, we have today with us an exceptional panel. I'm going to go into just a bit of detail here because it's worthwhile. We have Ron McCullough, city manager from Melville, a city with really amazing infrastructure to support operating biomass plants that just happens to be surrounded by between 3.5 million tons of wheat straw, and that has just become the nation's first certified BD zone. Ron's going to talk about why Melville decided to lead the nation by becoming Canada's first designated BD zone, A-rated, by the way, and how that BD zone designation can leverage Melville's infrastructure, its abundant biomass, and its willing suppliers, namely its farmers, to help attract bio-based production plants that can use it. We've got CEO of Red Leaf Pulp, Martin Pudlas. Red Leaf is building a $280 million plant that transforms wheat straw into pulp, and it's currently having a serious look at Melville for its plant location. This would be a first-of-kind plant in Canada. There are 6, is my understanding, operating plants in the US transforming wheat straw into pulp. There are exactly 0 in this country. It would be a first-of-kind. So very, very important. Martin's going to talk about the economic impact of this technology and why low feedstock risk is so important to his kind of projects. To speak about the impact of the BD Zone program and give you the bigger political picture, we have a Canadian national treasure. We have our own Ralph Goodale. former Minister of Natural Resources, Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Foods, Minister of Finance, Minister of Public Works, and most recently, and as of a few weeks ago, picked to be Canada's High Commissioner to the UK to focus on bilateral trade. And finally, but definitely not least, to speak of the importance of de-risking feedstock from the perspective of bioproject finance, we have the great and ubiquitous John May. Ubiquitous, because if there's a serious bio-based deal getting finance in North America, John's likely a part of it. John is the managing director of HamiltonClark Sustainable Capital. He is one of the top renewable energy bankers in North America. John's financed over $10 billion of loan and par values over his, I think longer now, 25-year career. Definitely longer, John. John, and not that many people know it, but everyone should, John pioneered the use of bonds as a form of project finance debt in the renewables market, helping getting the whole sector off the ground. John's a Class A guy. He's a great friend. He is arguably the preeminent biobanker in North America. So with that, let's get to it. I'm going to give you the headlines of the BD Zone program, what it is, why we think it's such a powerful way of bringing more clean, green, technology-based projects to Canada. And then we're going to go to the panel to get their perspective. So what is it? The BD Zone, or Bioeconomy Development Zone Initiative, it's a new program, and it works to drive bio-based investment across the country. And it does that by designating low risk or investment ready areas or zones. And it designates them with either a AA or an A rating. And what you're looking at right there on your screen is the BD Zone designation for the City of Melville. It's A rated for wheat straw supply. Now, BD zones have three things going for them. They have three attributes. Number one, they have a surplus of biomass, either wheat straw, wood fiber, corn stover, food waste, MSW, any kind of biomass. They have two, low risk supply chains to deliver it. And three, they have suitable infrastructure to support an operating plant, infrastructure like the City of Melville provides. Now, the value of the program is that it uses recognized standards to identify and rate low-risk BD zones. And this is so important. And they do it in a way that the capital markets trust, and they do it in a way that the economic development agencies can promote. It's really important. Capital market trust, and it gives our economic development agencies around the country something they can promote. So let's talk about why it's credible. Jake, if we can have the next slide. So it's credible because these BD zone designations are based upon the BSCR standards. Those are the Canadian standards for biomass supply chain risk, BSCR. And because the ratings are based upon the BSCR standards, this gives a BD zone rating unassailable credibility with the capital markets. And where does that credibility come from? It comes from the fact that these standards were developed under the guidance of a 150-member industry stakeholder group. They were developed with the guidance of a 60-member capital markets group made up of key investors in the bioindustry in North America. And not only was it developed with the support of the Canadian federal government and the SEC, the Standards Council of Canada, but it's currently being made into a national standard of Canada, an NSC, by the CSA and the SEC. So in about 4 months from now, this will be a designated national standard, the standards of Canada, the standards used to designate BD zones. That's why it's credible. Next slide, please. So how does it drive economic development? So it's really important to understand that the BD zone program is so much more than a credit rating for an area, so much more than a designation. The best way to think about it is the designation, the AA rating, the BD zone rating, is the fuel that drives the motor. But the economic development motor is the promotional network and the investor network. So BD zones drive bio-based economic development because they leverage a powerful network of local, provincial, and federal economic development organizations to promote and drive development to these zones. And what's more, it harnesses a $60 billion group of key capital markets, the investor network, to drive investment to projects that are located in the BD zones. So just a couple of very quick slides about the promotional network and the investor network. So the BD zones leverage, as I just said, local, provincial, and federal economic development organizations to promote these BD zone designation. The designation is the fuel. The designation is not the motor. The motor is what you're looking at. And what you're looking at is actually the federal motor, which is Invest in Canada. So Invest in Canada has in fact endorsed the BD zone risk ratings initiative as a means to drive investment into Canada, which means they will be promoting Melville's A-rated BD zone rating through the 160 global affairs offices around the world to help drive new bio-based investment to the city of Melbourne. Next slide, please. We talked a little bit about the capital markets group. This group was put together exactly for the purpose of developing these standards and the ratings. The BD zone rating is issued to all members. There's close to 70 right now of the capital markets group. The capital markets group is made up of key investors throughout the country, actually here and the United States. It's a $60 billion group. It's actually close to a $70 billion group. This is where the capital is coming from, the debt, the subordinate debt, and some of the equity to drive these projects. Next slide, please. So I'm going to wrap here, but I want to talk about why this is so very important. And it's so very important because feedstock risk is one of the key investment barriers for the capital markets. And I'm sure John May will speak to this later. But when we de-risk feedstock, we de-risk investment. And in bio-based project finance, there's three buckets of risk, right? There's market risks. Can you sell what you make? There's technology risk. Can you actually transform a biomass into a biofuels, a bioproduct, a biochemical? And there's feedstock risk. Can you get it? Can you get it out of the fields and to Red Leaf's pulp? Can you get it in the quantities they need at the price they need? Can you get it for woody biomass? Can you get it for food waste? Can you get it? Those are feedstock risks. And when these three pillars are aligned, when you get them right, the rate of investment can be extraordinary. And I'm going to close with a story that many of you listening know, but it's a story of corn ethanol in the US, right? And many of you will remember that before the RFS, corn was at about $2, $2.25 a bushel in the US, and US corn farmers were dying. And in 2007, the RFS2 created market demand for 15 billion gallons of ethanol a year in the US. And within 6 years, there were 200 plants built. And within 6 years, 40% of the corn grown in the United States of America was going into ethanol, 40% of the corn. Now, what's really important to understand is it wasn't just the mandate that by itself drove the development of so many plants. It wasn't the mandate. It was three things. It was the market pull created by the mandate combined with low technology risk and low feedstock risk. Those are the three things that are aligned. So why low technology risk? Because we've been making ethanol from corn since the days we called it moonshine, right? They're making it up in the hills in Virginia. It's not difficult to do. There's no technology risk with it. Low feedstock risk because American farmers know how to grow and deliver corn. And the capital markets understand that. So feedstock risk was low. And once those three things align, market demand, low tech risk, and low feedstock risk, what we saw was supercharged economic development in a very, very short time. Again, in less than 6 years, 200 plants. In less than 6 years, the price of corn went up from $2.50, $2.25 to very high actually, and then it settled at about $3.50, $3.60 where it is today. 40% of the US corn harvest was grown for ethanol, and the US corn farmer was saved, right? All that happened so fast because those three things align: technology, feedstock risk, and market pull. So I want to ask a question. Would the corn-based ethanol revolution have occurred if developers didn't know where to go to secure low-risk corn? If they didn't know how to assess long-term pricing risk for corn? If they didn't know where the availability of corn was best? And if you think the answer is no to any of those questions, then you recognize the value of this BD Zone program for Canada. So we are at a technology tipping point for biofuels, for biochemicals, and for biomass materials. We've got Enerchem, we've got Greenfield, we've got Ensign, we've got Lanzatech and Verbio and Red Leaf Pulp and the big guys, Chevron and BP. We have working technology and we have commercial scale plants right now. And so in terms of opportunity, make no mistake, Canada is at an inflection point. However, in order to be prepared so that when the next 200 plants are built, when those 200 plants are put up, and they're going to be put up very quickly, those are locating in Canada rather than the US, we must help them de-risk feedstock. And we've got to make it easy for them to locate in places where they're most likely to succeed. So biomass is a job creation engine, 132,000 jobs, arguably up to $31 billion of economic benefits to this country. But we can't get there if we don't set ourselves up for success. And the BD Zone program helps do that. And it does it by helping ensure that Canada is the most competitive place in the world for clean bio-based technology. So look, that's really the overview of the program. I'm going to pass it off to the panel and our next speaker, and that is going to be Ron McCullough from the City of Melville. Ron, take it away.
Thank you, Jordan. Good morning, everyone. Jordan's a tough act to follow. Stole most of my fuel, but we'll add some.
Sorry about that.
All right, that's all right. Great context. So where's Melville, Saskatchewan? For any of you with a lifelong ambition to find Waldo, I can say we're much easier to find than Waldo. This slide gives you North American context. We're located in the Canadian heartland, prairies of Western Canada. The red star on the map roughly depicts where Melville is. We'll quickly jump from macro to micro in the Saskatchewan context. Located approximately 150 kilometers or 100 miles northeast of the capital city of Regina. Jordan touched on what we've been doing since June, collaborative effort with ECOSTRAT, Red Leaf Pulp, looking at wheat straw availability and the risks around that as a feedstock, and also interested in the BD Zone designation. You might ask why we're doing that, and simply put, it's about vision, and it's about basing our vision on 5 very basic sustainability principles. Number 1, economy. We are a small community in rural Saskatchewan. It requires economy to maintain and build a community, grow a community. And the bioeconomy opportunity is tremendous in terms of adding value to grow a community. Agriculture is a primary economic driver in our region, of course, in Saskatchewan as a province. And taking this example only, wheat straw to pulp creates a tremendous opportunity to add value to our city in terms of economy, add value to the producers within an 80 to 100 kilometer radius. And you look at that added value between processing within the city, the labor market, the infrastructure to support it, and the value added to the economy around us, and use a few economic multipliers, the outcome becomes exponential. So number 1, economy is driving this for us. Number 2, infrastructure. Melville is situated at the intersection of a strong provincial highway network. Railway exists. We have one of CN's largest, and I believe they tout the largest rail yard investment in Saskatchewan, located in Melville. We have an asset management plan in place to manage existing infrastructure. Aside from the ECOSTRAT study, we've also undertaken a cost-benefit analysis of the infrastructure investment necessary to support industry, to know that we're going to be making the right investments at the right locations. We have infrastructure capacity, and we certainly have the ability to build on that capacity when, where, and if needed. Number 3, environment. We are interested in opportunities that embrace clean technology, seeking solutions that respect the environment, especially when it comes to water, wastewater, and solid waste management. And well, when you look at the foundation we have here and in our region, in the province of Saskatchewan and across Western Canada, simply put, farmers, producers are the quintessential stewards of the land. This is an excellent fit, adding value to agriculture and respecting the environment. Number 4, we look at the element of social cultural, and this is the fabric of our community. We are a small community, I'll emphasize mighty, small but mighty community in rural Saskatchewan. Agricultural roots, traditional values. We understand the demographics of our community, and certainly able to attract labor market necessary to support this type of industry. This type of industry, again, supports agriculture, adds value, an excellent match to the culture of our community. And then number 5, the 5th element of sustainability, as I see it, is governance. We have a stable political environment in Melville and in the province, I would say, generally speaking. We have a strong leadership team in Melville. We've also undertaken socioeconomic impact analysis of our community to look at internal and external capacities. And when I say external, I'm talking about health, education, policing, etc. Do we have the capacity to support growth? Short answer is yes. We take a collaborative approach, engaging, seeking mutually beneficial outcomes. As Jordan mentioned, the red leaf opportunity, of course, is potential for Melville. That doesn't mean at this moment that they've made a decision to be here. It is one opportunity. There are many. So again, economy, infrastructure, respecting the environment, fitting with our social cultural fabric, and matching with governance. We look for matches in all 5 of those pillars. I've got a clear yes on all 5. American Idol, I think that would be a golden ticket. So we're in a good spot on this, and I'd like to summarize Jordan with simply put, Melville is a great place to live, work, play, raise a family, retire. We're absolutely open for business, interested in bioeconomy investment. And remember what I said up front, we're way easier to find than Waldo if you've been looking for him for a lifetime. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. There's, I think I'm going to pass it immediately to Red Leaf, and take it away, Martin.
All right, thanks, Jordan. And I see that Ron is flying the Rider Green, so I just want to make sure that everybody sees at Red Leaf we have the ever-present George Reed bobblehead watching over our operation as well. So good morning, everyone. I think for all of us, 2020 has been a year like unlike any other time before. And personally, it's been a time of immense change, having moved from over 4 decades in the forest industry, most recently with Canfor Pulp, where I oversaw the operations and innovation for the company, to Red Leaf Pulp, which is a new venture in the agricultural sector. And you know, the journey I've been on has certainly brought me to realize that there's such a compelling story for Canada to make the step into the production of pulp from agricultural feedstocks to complement really the long established wood pulp industry. So the reality is that other regions of the world are actively operating these mills already. So we're looking to optimize and scale up the productivity levels to ensure that this is viable in an economy such as Canada. So on the next slide, and by way of background, Red Leaf Pulp is an entity that was established through common ownership with All North Consultants, who's been the leader in ag feedstock pulp process design both in North America and in Europe. They've been involved in $500 million US of investment in the space. And so as a result, Red Leaf Pulp is well positioned, if not uniquely positioned, to create this first of its kind facility in the Canadian prairies. Red Leaf Pulp represents a significant reduction in carbon emissions And given that straw is an annual fiber, the energy required and the water required is much less compared to conventional wood pulping. So, think about the time it takes for straw to biodegrade in comparison with wood. And this reduction does not include the potential benefits of making low carbon intensity transportation fuels, just the reduction in carbon to make the pulp fiber. So today, these fibers certainly have demand in today's world of increasing packaging and tissue and the move away from plastics and styrofoam. On the next slide, you'll see a pictorial of how Red Leaf's pulp business model represents a truly circular economy on many levels. Straw that currently creates very low value today will be made into renewable fibers, and the non-cellulose or non-hemicellulose components will be used for soil amendment or low carbon energy. Straw has roughly half the lignin content of wood, which makes it easier to pulp, but the unique characteristics of these organics have many end uses. And the fact is our process will liquefy these organic components of the straw, and the cooking process does not require sulfur like many of the wood pulping process. So it provides an advantage in the economics of upgrading this type of lignin. And it makes an ideal feedstock for low carbon fuels and other products. So I think it's important to take a step back and get a perspective of what the pulp industry means to us in Canada and how our global position is changing. And so on the next slide, I would say that when I started in the industry, Canada set world pricing, and we were a dominant player. And today you can see that position has changed. Other jurisdictions have made significant investment, in particular South America, where some countries have purposed up to 1/3 of their land mass to cloned forests, measured solely as air-dried metric tons of pulp per hectare per year. And these eucalyptus crops or forests can be harvested in less than 15 years. The pulp industry is an important contributor to the Canadian economy. The forest sector overall accounts for just shy of 10% of our exports, and the pulp industry generates about 40% or 7.7 billion of that value. We believe that there's tremendous opportunity in Canada to use that know-how and apply it to agricultural feedstock. So by way of comparison, if we were just forward, thank you. You can see that the 3 prairie provinces alone could generate an incremental $4.3 billion of value. And I think this is important. There would be no impact on land use or biodiversity. It would increase the revenue for growers and provide diversification to the agricultural sector into products that have not historically faced tariff challenges, and fully scaled up, it could provide thousands of jobs. So on the next slide, the largest surprise that I had coming out of the wood pulp industry is that pulp made from wheat straw is comparable, if not superior from a quality perspective, to South American eucalyptus pulps. And on the slide, you'll see weighted average fiber length as an indication of the strength of the pulp that can be made. And it clearly shows that egg pulp would complement the existing wood pulp products made in this country. Most downstream products are made from a combination of fibers. So Canada's northern softwood craft pulps would work well in concert with red leaf pulp's fibers. So some may ask, why wheat straw? So on the next slide, you'll see that the answer is not complicated. It's the most readily available. And the Department of Energy in the US estimates that there is 3 times the agricultural biomass than wood residual biomass. So as we looked at this, the evidence point to the understanding that there's enough feedstock to supply our operations, but we wanted to ensure that we weren't drinking our own Kool-Aid and that our risk register concerns were addressed. So to that end, on the next slide, you'll see George has done a good job of describing this. Red Leaf Pulp has participated in a joint study with the City of Melville and ECOSTRAT to quantify what the risk opportunity profile for its feedstock supply chain would be. And this BD zone rating system we saw as a robust approach, which applies a recognized standard to the process. So the quick summary on the next slide is that there's minimal competition for the straw. The opportunity is to work with producers to provide baling capacity and ensure the economic benefit provided for straw is tangible. ECOSTRAT found that at a 38% participation rate, that all the straw could be made available within an 80-kilometer radius of Melville. So compared to the logistical challenges in BC today for wood supply, this is a dream. So from a perspective of red leaf, you might ask, why ECOSTRAT? Why the BD zone rating process? Well, here's an example of how we gain clarity. On the next slide, you'll see that ECOSTRAT ranks seasonal weather impacts on delivered costs as the highest risk or most significant risk for a project. So this led us to do a more fulsome look at the logistical impact of going farther for the feedstock. So we looked at a 1 in 10-year low, and really it follows from that we would need double the area. And if you remember from your high school math, it's an exponential equation area. So the first 10 kilometers quickly become less important than the next 10 kilometers, and then the next 10 kilometers, and so on. So we estimate that a 10-year low would only impact feed costs by $6 an oven-dried ton of straw. So in the big picture, that's not going to be a showstopper for a business. And you got to remember, we'll also enjoy the better than average years as well. So in summary, next slide. I just wanted to show this. This was Redley's view prior to working with ECOSTRAT in Melville, and it's a slide that outlines the database that NRCan has. And from that analysis, we were targeting a 25% participation rate and 100-kilometer aggregation radius. And we think that we can work with the producers with novel contract arrangements where they would benefit from strong pulp markets, while we would still provide value for them at the bottom of the cycle. And we believe that if quality is monitored, that we're going to have about a 2-year shelf life. So bottom line, we see that Saskatchewan could accommodate 4 to 5 facilities alone. And so to summarize on the next slide, we believe that Canada has a tremendous opportunity to create value from cereal grain straw while meeting climate objectives, and that this pathway will create a circular economy, promote domestic manufacturing, and expand Canada's expertise in the green economy. With that, Jordan, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ron. That's fascinating. Compared to wood supply in BC, wheat straw is a dream. I'm going to remember that quote, Martin. If there's one thing to take away, I mean, there's many things to take away from that fascinating presentation, but this will tie directly into Ralph's bigger picture, political picture, and jobs picture in a second. 285 direct and indirect jobs per plant, 4 to 5 plants capable of being sited in Saskatchewan alone. Look, math may not be my forte, but by my calculations, that's 1,140 to 1,425 potential jobs from one bio-based green technology siting in low-risk areas in Saskatchewan. I think that's a heck of a lead-in for you, Ralph, and I'd like you to take it away. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, Jordan. Thank you very much. I'm trying my best to make the camera work here. It says the host has disabled it. I hope this technology doesn't.
Jake, can you fix that? Can you get Ralph's video going?
Okay, I'll see if I can.
Ralph,
there we go.
A picture is worth 1,000 words, but your words are worth 1,000 pictures.
How are we now?
They were better.
Okay, well, I'll just carry on. If the picture arrives, that's great. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. I'm joining you from Saskatchewan, and it's from that geographic and geopolitical perspective that I'm participating in this very interesting and I hope transformative discussion. Unlike many of you, how's that? There we go. Unlike many of you, I am by no means a technical or scientific expert in bioproducts and the bioeconomy. Very interested, but by no means an expert. But in one capacity or another, I have been heavily involved in the politics of Saskatchewan and Canada for more than 40 years, including nearly 33 years as an elected federal member of parliament and provincial MLA. So I've accumulated some of the scars and the bruises of practical experience in what works and what doesn't work in the big court of public opinion and political choice. And in that regard, in a resource-based province like Saskatchewan, where the development of coal and oil and natural gas makes up a large fraction of the provincial GDP, creates many jobs, and pays significant taxes, the advocates for the bioeconomy have some really important and challenging work to do. In a nutshell, as this conversation goes on, and hopefully it intensifies across a province like Saskatchewan, we have to take the fear and loathing out of the conversation about energy, environment, economic success, and the transition to a greener way to live our lives. Even though Canada's Prairie West is deeply rooted, both historically and currently, in the bioeconomy, from the dominance of the buffalo 150 years ago to the fur trade, forestry, ranching, and crop production, with some of the smartest, most innovative, and productive farmers in the world. The talk of moving away from fossil fuels and transitioning to a net zero carbon world is actually frightening to a great many Saskatchewan people because they don't see the scenario of what follows next and what will be good or bad for them. And fear and anger and resentment are powerful political motivators. They are easily exploited by political parties to defend the status quo or resist change, while new political movements, as we've seen a little bit of in the West, come on the scene advocating some radical remedies like Western separatism. It's not that Saskatchewan people are climate deniers. They are not. We believe the science that human behavior is causing the climate to change in dangerous ways that threaten our planet. But many in this big, rural, far-flung province doubt that we can actually do much in our little bailiwick to reduce that threat, given our circumstances, our location, our distances, and our costs. That is the narrative that largely dominates the political atmosphere in a province like Saskatchewan. Right now, to the point that in our current provincial election campaign, voting day is that's just about 2 weeks away, transitioning to a greener economy is not a serious issue on the agenda. To talk about it in a meaningful way is sometimes to invite ridicule. So there is a big job to be done to get a constructive dialogue going, to build a clear sense of what good a flourishing bioeconomy can do for Saskatchewan, how big and how diversified it can be, far beyond food production, and most certainly including renewable energy, and how it represents not a net cost, but a net benefit, not a net loss, but a net gain, not fewer businesses and jobs, but more and good jobs that are equivalent to the ones that would change in the process of this transition, and a larger, more successful economy overall. To many of the people on this webinar today, all of that may seem absolutely self-evident, but that's not necessarily the case among many elected officials in Saskatchewan, or their policy advisors, or the media, or the business community, or labor leaders, or opinion makers of many other kinds. And that's why it's so very important for events like this one and many other types of communication need to be undertaken to get the sense of opportunity and reality in the bioeconomy. It's too bad that Saskatchewan is a little bit behind the curve here, except obviously for the city of Melville, which is well ahead of the curve, because we have extraordinary bioresources in this province. We have over 40% of Canada's arable farmland, and great farmers who, by the way, invented zero tillage, and a short generation ago transformed the Prairie Basin into a vast carbon sink as a consequence. They did that based on compelling science led by Dr. Don Rennie at the University of Saskatchewan, and they did it because it made good financial sense. They make more money from zero till. Those same farmers have huge potential to go far beyond their impressive capacity to produce the world's highest quality food stocks. They should also be the very best in the world at renewable fuels, like ethanol, thermal pellets, renewable diesel, biojet fuel for transportation, heat, and electricity. A thriving bioeconomy can help decouple jobs and growth from increasing emissions. And I think Jake may put up a slide that demonstrates how this can be done, how it has been done in the state of California. Decoupling jobs and growth from increasing emissions. You can have more of the former, more jobs and growth, and a larger population, and less pollution. And California has demonstrated that that is indeed doable. There are thousands of different potential products, and the global market is measured in trillions of dollars. International market demand and investment funds are gradually shifting from hydrocarbons toward lower carbon sources. It is a gradual process. It will take some decades to run its course, but the trend seems clear, and those who get started early may well earn the largest rewards. In making the case for the bioeconomy, advocates need to acknowledge the angst in play and the uncertainty in places like Saskatchewan, and be careful not to belittle or antagonize those whom they seek to persuade and motivate. They need to be fully prepared with facts and figures like the ones that have been exposed in this presentation today about bioproducts, markets, prices, and profits, and real scenarios showing the ways in which a province like Saskatchewan can succeed and do better. The discussion has to be positive, tangible, and inclusive. They need to have credible third-party validators to vouch for the pitch. And here in Saskatchewan, I would strongly recommend that an organization like APAS, the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, would be a terrific ally to communicate with farmers and build that certainty of the supply chain. Of course, serious investors need to be ready to roll. And that's where the idea of the bioeconomy development zones can be really helpful, to have that independent, third-party, standards-based legitimacy attached to, for example, now the city of Melville, which has a step up on all of its competition around the province. And pilot projects, I think, can help to demonstrate feasibility. Maybe a biomass operation using wheat straw at Melville. You are actually paying farmers for waste in their fields that they would otherwise just burn. Maybe a canola crushing facility near Regina, manufacturing renewable fuels for heavy trucks, locomotives, marine vessels, and jet aircraft. And in the process, creating a new market for canola almost as large as the one that was lost when China slammed its doors. And maybe a flax straw pelletizing plant near Estevan. Again, paying farmers for their waste, getting rid of some of the toughest crop residue that comes from flax, and offsetting job losses in the coal sector. The bioeconomy is not a threat. It's not a criticism. It's not something to be feared or hated. It's an opportunity to get ahead of the future energy curve worldwide to create jobs and make a profit, more profit than before. And Saskatchewan, with its bioeconomy fundamentals so strongly in place, Saskatchewan could well be one of the best places in the world to make that profit and succeed. But it's very important for the advocates of the bioeconomy to make sure that all of those benefits are well understood, that it's tangible, it's profitable, and it's inclusive. We're not going to leave anybody behind. Thanks.
Ralph, thank you very much. I mean, what's to be said after a presentation like that? If there's anyone though that can follow it, it is the great John May, who has been the financial engine behind actually standing up so many of these projects. In fact, many of the preeminent ones, both in the United States and also in Canada. John, I'm going to hand it to you to talk about the link between feedstock risk and the advantage, if any, that the BD Zone program may give to enabling investment and driving capital into these kind of projects, standing them up. Over to you.
Thanks.
And by the way, we're going to go a little bit past the hour, maybe till 5 after, because I certainly don't want you to be too time constrained, John. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Well, it's really great to be here. It's a thrill for me to see Jeff Passmore and Jordan and my new client Martin and be a part of this. As I think Jordan has mentioned, I've been a biobanker for about 25 years now. What does that mean? I've probably financed more first commercial scale bio projects than any other banker, certainly in North America, if not the world. The problem that biomass and the bioeconomy always had from the beginning, I'm just going to speak very plainly, is that it was perceived as a sector that had more risk than solar and wind. The sun shines, the wind blows, right? The problem with biomass, as perceived by investors in the market, was what is biomass and what risk does it present? Cutting right to it, my great friend Jordan, I think, has accomplished one of the great analytical frameworks in terms of developing it that the biosector has seen. Until he and his firm, ECOSTRAT, and the other members of the committee that he put together came forward with this analytically based criteria, there were really no rating agency guidelines for how to measure the credibility and creditworthiness of feedstock. And so investors were sort of left to guess at exactly what the feedstock risk would be. Now, there's a quantitative model that also has qualitative aspects that Jordan and his team has created that has basically transformed bio and the bioeconomy really forever. We now have that. The only thing that's tantamount to that in bio that runs, I think, a close second is the use of technology risk insurance, which is something that I played a part in as well. Those two things notwithstanding, I guess my main message to all of you is that bio is still the toughest sector of the major sectors in renewables globally to raise money in. And I think there's one thing that I've observed. There's probably a lot of reasons for that, but I want to talk about what I've observed in the last year or more. And that is that everybody I talk to, every developer I talk to around the world says to me, John, I want to build a project in Bulgaria and or wherever, and I want it to, be a biomass feedstock driven conversion technology oriented, multi-product output, energy, non-energy output product project. And what I need is what we in the investment banking business call development equity. Two important words that I live with every day. Development equity is the money that you need as a developer today to get you to the point where you can launch a project financing for a first commercial scale project. And what's happened in the world economy is that over the 20 years that I've been doing this, or 25 years, is that why this year has been so difficult and the time leading up to it is that there is a lot less development equity, i.e. cash, available for developers. And so the question that I get asked most often is not what I mostly got asked in my career, which is, can you find the debt and the equity to construct the project? But rather, can you find the development equity, which could be anywhere from 5 million to 25 million, I would say, on average, in pre-project finance development equity. And this is the main point that I want to make on today's call. The answer that I have found after working my tail off the last year is, and talking to everybody around the world that I know, is this. We have crossed a line as an industry, both renewables in general and the bioeconomy in particular. And that line is the recognition that sustainability is the most important thing. And in order to achieve sustainable goals, investors of all kinds are adopting sustainable policies. So whether it's traditional financial investors, whether it's strategics like oil companies who, as Jordan and Jeff know, for the most part over our career, have not been a big supporter of biofuels and bioproducts. But now they're all adopting a sustainable clean tech approach. They're committing to zero carbon by a certain date in terms of their investments. And then there's this third category, not just financials and not just strategics, but sustainably oriented private equity funds. And you've heard of Bill Gates's Breakthrough Ventures and Richard Branson's fund, and
McCullough.
There are many of them. They run in all sizes. And so what I want to say is that where I'm seeing success in raising development equity as well as project equity is in going to the institutional investors comprised of financials, strategics, and particularly sustainably motivated funds who have a demonstrated and really publicly committed commitment now with the advertisements that have been made to invest in renewables, and in particular that includes bio. So what I say to sustainable investors of all types is, if you want to play in this space, which is arguably the biggest space, environmental space of all time in the country, you need to recognize that as an investor, you have to participate at the early stage of technology development and project development. And you need to put money in early in the form of development equity, which then leads to later capital that can be provided by that same investor as well as other investors to build the first project and then build a series of projects that would dot the landscape, for example, in certain areas in Canada where the biomass is really strong. And last and certainly not least, I guess overall, my thought is that what Jordan's accomplished is that he has made it easier for these types of investors who are sustainably motivated to feel less at risk about the money they're putting into this, because he has quantified and qualified the biomass risk or the bioeconomy risk in a way that it's never been done before. And that is not certainty, but it's a degree of certainty that he's added that was taken for granted in solar and wind and is now available in biomass. And I think that's what's going to drive the future. So thanks for inviting me, and I appreciate the chance to talk.
Thank you, John. Much appreciated as ever. John touches on the point of de-risking capital investment. The whole point of this program is exactly about that. We're coming up on the hour. We're going to take there's many questions. We are not going to have time to do them all. We will answer them all online. I do want to give the first question, though, in a very brief answer to Martin. Question is there a rough timeline for the red leaf pulp plant to move forward with the biomass facility in Western Canada? What are your timelines, Martin?
Yeah, our build timeline, Jordan, is 2022. So we'll be doing the project development and capital raise with John through remainder this year in 2021, with a start on the build in the spring of 2022.
Let me ask you a follow-up question, Martin. Do you think that being involved in the BD zone designation of the City of Melville, should you choose to site there, will help with your capital raise by virtue of the promotion and the press that a BD zone designation, the first designation in the nation, will attract? And John, that question is to you as well. It will make your job easier.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to go first, John, or would?
Yeah, I would definitely go first and say I love what Jordan's done with, again, just a great idea with overlaying the analysis and recognition of a great biomass area from a feedstock supply credibility standpoint, overlaying that with a BDO zone. You are double de-risking the deal if you do it that way, and this is the state of the art.
Right. Thank you.
And I would say, Jordan, from Red Leaf Pulp's perspective, certainly it's allowed us to engage with the community, to have access to the grower producers, to have those discussions of their concerns, and to really give us, assurance that what we had in our risk register were the right things to be looking at, and gave us data to be able to de-risk and have confidence that we're going to have wheat straw available.
Look, a $280 million plant, the first of many in Western Canada, hopefully likely in Saskatchewan, hopefully likely in the city of Melville. It's a big deal. John May always gives me too much credit. The standards and the program is a result of the brilliant analysts at our shop, ECOSTRAT, but even more, again, I must give credit to the huge stakeholder group, 150 biomass growers, biomass operators, John May, the investment banks, the financiers, and the 65-member capital markets group. Every one of the major banks in this country is a member. They've all had a role in making sure that the standards and the designations that can be made from it have credibility. So I want to get to one last question, then we're going to wrap it up. And here's the question. It's from Lynn. The question is that what Ralph is saying is they have the same issue in Newfoundland. She says the new premier is saying that the same thing about the need to transition for a green economy, especially related to energy. But there's an issue given the status quo energy and the collapse and resulting dire economic situation. Few feel it's possible. The real question, she says, is how to get people out of their fear-based approach. And we can't transition when we have leaders, even when we have leaders saying it's possible. I'm just going to sort of frame the answer up maybe a little bit. The BD Zone initiative is not a political initiative. In Canada, it doesn't require government subsidies to make it work. It's a market-based initiative. It simply gives the market, developers, and capital markets better tools to do what they're set up to do. And I think it's vitally important that this issue, this initiative can get off the ground by harnessing the power of the market, the power of our Economic Development Agency, who don't need to be told to use a better tool to attract business to their province. They'll do it. So I think the fact that it's a market-based approach is one of the key benefits of this program. And I'm going to hand it to you, Ralph, for the last word. Go ahead.
Well, that is very true. Evan, pardon me, Jordan. I'm used to doing other interviews.
With my brother, I know. He's better than me. He's more experienced.
I'm tempted to wade in there, but I will not. I think that's very important. The point about communities like Melville taking the lead, the market being the key instrument, not dependent upon political will to get the initiative started. That is critically important. I think another key part of the equation in a province like Saskatchewan, and perhaps Newfoundland in a different sort of way, is motivating and connecting with the suppliers of the foodstuff, the farmers. That's why I recommend working hard on a good alliance with the APAS organization, the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, and demonstrate that this actually makes more money for the farm operation. Right now, it's the fall of the year. Stubble and wheat straw is being burned in fields from one end of Saskatchewan to the other, just to get rid of the waste. And the real tough one to get rid of is black straw, because it's a very durable kind of residue, and it lingers for a long time. So you can actually make a very good case. Instead of burning that stubble and just treating it as a waste product, you're actually giving a market value to something that would otherwise just be burned or a nuisance. And that adds value to the farm operation and puts more money into farmers' pockets. I think that's a critical message in a rural province like Saskatchewan. Farmers will make more money because of this.
When farmers have an additional crop to subsidize on-farm income, aside from the primary crop, we have huge benefits in terms of on-farm stability and the growth of our farmers. And by the way, when it's woody biomass, the stability in our forests, of our forestry producers, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots more to say. We are out of time. I want to thank our panelists very, very much. And Jeff, I'm going to leave it to you to wrap up. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Sadly, as you say, Jordan, the hour went by way too fast, and that's all the time we have. But thanks to all the panelists. And thank you, Jordan, for leading this discussion and managing the questions. If any of the people who are registered want to connect with any of the panelists, you see my email address there, jeff@passmoregroup.ca. Send me an email. I will introduce you to the panelists that you might be interested in chatting with further. Thank you very much to our platinum sponsor, EcoStrat, and a really big thank you to today's host, Jordan Solomon, and also EcoStrat, and thanks to our audience. Thanks to our technical team, Jake and Eva. And please note that next week's webinar, Net Zero by 2050, What Role for Biofuels and Other Non-Fossil Fuels? That's next Tuesday, October 20th, and it's hosted by Advanced Biofuels Canada. This is Jeff Passmore signing off. See you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you.